This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, are you going to be going on to one of the venues for the Lieutenant Governor's listening tour?
No, but I've been following them on the news. It's very interesting.
What is now, we need to reinforce
Yes.
the message with our viewers. What is he listening to or listening about?
He's on a marijuana listening tour, and he's trying to determine whether it should be expanded and whether recreational marijuana should be legalized in Pennsylvania. So it's very interesting. He's going to hit all 67 counties.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
He's just like President Nixon when he first ran for the presidency. He made a point of visiting all 50 states.
That's smart.
Here, the Lieutenant Governor now is visiting all 67
He's going to be
counties.
busy, very busy. Yeah, should be interesting. He supports it, and the governor is a little questionable, so we'll see. See what happens.
It's interesting how these things evolve, because when medical marijuana was being talked about first, there was assurances that there'd be no opportunity in the future for recreational marijuana, and now things have changed.
Yeah.
Why, Maura?
Well, I think more and more states are going in that direction, so we might as well explore it. I don't know that Pennsylvania will, but we're going to explore it. But there is such promising news with medical marijuana. They've found some links to helping cancer patients, and so I think it's going to continue to expand in some manner.
Well,
we'll be late to the game, but we might eventually legalize it.
We asked Justin Trudeau if he'd come down and be a special guest with us today, but Justin, the Prime Minister of Canada, couldn't make it to talk about Canada's experience with recreational marijuana. So we thought that we should pay attention to perhaps the most important thing in Pennsylvania at this present time, and that is our economy and workforce development.
Our budget.
And there's no one better to talk with that about than Gene Barr. Gene, welcome back to Behind the Headlines.
Good to be back. Thanks for the invitation.
You are the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry.
Yes, I was when I left this morning.
Yes.
So we're still okay.
Hopefully that'll be the same when you get back.
Are you going to be attending the listening tour?
I will not. No, I don't have any plans for that one. It's a little bit outside, although it is an important issue for business. We got involved in the medical marijuana to make sure that employers' concerns relative to safety in the workplace were taken care of. I think that would translate over as well if we were to make any moves in that direction. I think in addition to what Maura said, what's driving a lot of this, to be blunt, is the need for revenue. Hey, we can tax this and get all kinds of money without raising taxes elsewhere. That, I think, is a big driver of this.
It's always about the money.
It is.
Follow the money.
Yeah, we understand that some of the substandard agricultural soil in Pennsylvania might be improved through the raising of hemp. And maybe Pennsylvania could become a major hemp manufacturer.
I've heard that as well.
But you've been busy on many other fronts. Apparently with Governor Ridge a number of years ago thought it was crazy for the governor to deliver two speeches 2 weeks apart, the State of the Commonwealth address and the budget address, and he combined them. And every governor since then has been combining them. We find Governor Wolf recently delivered his address, and we're here to ask you about that address. I've read some of the material that you and some other business leaders have issued, Gene, that you and I have to agree. The governor seems to be seeking a reconciliation with the business community and seems to understand that we have to do certain things to move the economy forward. What did you think of the tone of the address?
I would agree with that. I don't know whether you'd want to use the word conciliatory. It certainly was approaching that, and I think it was well received by legislative leadership. I mean, look, there are things in there that he had talked about before that will be part of the discussions as we move into June that we do not like minimum wage increases and other tax on natural gas. But the one thing that I think we can all work on and seize on is the workforce development side. For a number of reasons. It's a crucial issue, and also I think we've really got to show the people of this Commonwealth, and perhaps by extension the country, that we really can work together, that Republicans can work with Democrats, that business can work with labor, that the administration can work with the legislature. We've got to begin to demonstrate these things.
And you've been appointed co-chair of the new Keystone Economic Development and Workforce Command Center.
I know.
Is that
Command
correct?
Center, yeah.
It's not a rumor?
It's true. The governor said it. It must be true.
Okay.
And so
Well, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
Yes,
a
congratulations.
great selection.
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of work, but it actually, I think, is a natural outgrowth of what we did about 18 months ago with the Middle Class Task Force, in which the governor asked both Rick Bloomingdale, the head of the AFL-CIO, and myself to co-chair regional meetings on what we need to do to assist.
And is Rick your co-chair for this
Rick's
as well?
co-chair for this as well. So I think it's a natural outgrowth. And as we did that in 6 different places, the number one issue we heard from everybody was that our workforce development activities need to be better coordinated. We need to do better outreach. And so I think this is a completely natural outgrowth, and it's something that we at the Chamber have found. Maura, as you know, we do an economic survey every year, and we ask our members, one of the questions is the old, what keeps you up at night? And for years it was taxes and health care and the general economy. Last year, for the first time ever, the number one issue was not being able to find the people we need for my business.
One of the things you're quoted as saying is that the governor needs to have modern, smart policies in place. What would those be? I know a lot of it, the governor thinks raise the minimum wage, everything's solved. Your position is a little bit more in depth, deeper than that, I should say. Yeah,
it is. And you know, as I said, look, we've talked a lot with the governor. This is one of the things on which we've agreed to disagree, set that aside, and work on things that we can. If it was as easy as simply waving a magic wand and putting everybody at 15, then we could easily do it at $30 or $40 or $50. But I think we need to look at the demographics of who's receiving the minimum wage. They're overwhelmingly young. 90% don't have children. There are better ways of helping single parents who are working through things like the Earned Income Tax Credit program that we should be implementing, rather than hold small businesses, because they're the majority of the people who employ minimum wage people, and the average small business in this country makes between $50,000 and $55,000 a year. So you're asking a small business that's not making a whole lot to go subsidize, not all the case, but say a high school kid working for them on weekends who lives in a house where the household income is $100,000. That's just not fair. There are better ways of targeting this. And so we would agree, again, one of the areas of commonality is let's work on workforce, getting people the skills they need, making them aware of opportunities such that organically and through the process we begin to get them better wages.
And Gene, there are national studies and there are state studies on what the effect of increasing the minimum wage might be. Where we can all perhaps agree that increasing it a little bit is perhaps overdue, but when we're going up to $15 an hour, what have those studies shown, Gene?
Sure, and let's look at what we ought to increase. I would argue that there are 2 minimum wages now anyway. First off, it really is an entry wage and a training wage. People who make minimum wage tend to get faster wage increases and higher percentage than everybody else once you get them in and see that they work. And so that's certainly part of this. But in this economy, there's a statutory minimum wage, but as you go across Pennsylvania, you'll hear people say, oh no, the minimum wage here is $11, or the minimum wage here is $12 or $10. But it shows, again, Pennsylvania is very diverse. Trying to find one number that functions as a minimum wage is very difficult. Let's talk about those studies for a minute, because there are 2 that I think are relevant. One of them is the Congressional Budget Office, which found that $10.10 an hour, we would lose between 500,000 and 500,000 jobs if that were implemented. Now, the governor's talking about going to 12 and then 15 in steps. The other one here in Pennsylvania is the Independent Fiscal Office, which found, again, at $10.10, we would lose somewhere around 33,000 jobs. Now, let's be honest. Some people would get a raise out of this. There's no question about that. But some would lose their jobs. Some would see fewer hours. There have been studies out on the West Coast that have passed $15 that have shown this. It's actually been detrimental to the minimum wage holder. And there are some people who never get that opportunity to figure out how they can work in the workplace, how they acquire the skills, how they climb up the ladder, how they learn to work with others, how they learn to communicate. All the things that are crucial because someone can't afford to bring them into the workplace.
And timing, the governor's talking about making that first increase in July.
Correct.
Is that correct?
And interestingly, it would apply, unlike others, it would apply across the board. So it would apply to municipal government, It would apply to nonprofits, which has happened in the past. So, you know, regularly we'll get calls from nonprofits who employ people with certain disabilities who say, look, we just can't, I mean, we can employ these folks at $9 an hour, but at 10 or 12 or 15, we can't bring them in anymore.
So how many years in a row now has the governor been proposing a severance tax increase?
Every year since he's been in.
Okay, so it's quite a few.
He has, and again, it's one of those that we just disagree on this. We have a highest effective corporate net income tax rate in the United States. They pay that, that's 10%. They also have the impact fee or tax. It's a tax, we called it a fee because nobody wanted to say they were passing a tax increase in those days. And it's the one of the areas that we're seeing tremendous growth. And I'm a firm believer that when you find out what your strengths are, you play to them. Our strengths right now, one of them certainly is energy. And when you look at what's happening out in Southwest PA with the $6 billion or so that Shell's putting in the ground,
oh, the
that
schools out
becomes
there are
endangered.
training their kids to
Absolutely.
leave high school and go work.
Many schools have figured
it's
this out, how to
amazing.
turn this around. And
Yeah.
many schools, not just the high schools, but a lot of the post-secondary have done a wonderful job in revamping their curriculum, which is one of the things we're going to talk about as part of this workforce initiative here. What do we need to do? Not only for that, but for jobs across the board, careers across the board.
So I just came across an article today about venue shopping for
Oh,
medical
yes.
liability.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you've weighed in. I mean, I'm sure you have
Oh,
an
we
old
have.
position you could resurrect on that.
Oh no, we've weighed in on this
Okay.
particular proposal. It's bad.
It's very bad.
It's very
Yeah.
bad. It was one of the things that we had to do back in '02, as you know.
Right, right. So, but it's back again. It has
It's-
reared its ugly
It's
head.
reared its ugly head again. To us, it's just a common sense. It's actually one of the things which we agree with the trial bar on. The trial bar said there shouldn't be two classes. We agree.
Okay.
We think the venue,
Shocking.
what the hospitals and the doctors got back in '02 to keep doctors in Pennsylvania and hospitals open is something that should apply to us as well. You should file the suit where the incident happened or where they have a business. But
I got to stop you guys and back you up a
I
little
know.
bit for our viewers. Will you define what you're talking
Oh,
about when you talked about
pe-
venue shopping
people
and
could
liability insurance?
Shop around to file their lawsuits, and Philadelphia was
typically
one of
they
those
file in
for
Philadelphia.
medical liability
Okay.
cases, and they would file in Philadelphia because there were huge jury awards and there
Correct.
was craziness going on there. So
They've got somewhere between 25 and
Thank you.
30%
Sorry
of the
about that.
population,
Oh, it's okay.
and about 40% of the suits tend to get filed there. It worked tremendously well for doctors and hospitals. Back in '02, the average medical malpractice premium, as I understand it, was about $125,000. Because of the reforms, not just the venue, but certificate of merit and others, that has now declined to somewhere around $50,000 or $75,000. And we started to keep doctors in Pennsylvania.
and we
That's important.
lost a lot.
We
in
lost a lot.
2002.
We
It's
lost
very
a lot.
important.
Exactly.
Now, Gene, your organization is well known for having some of the premier events in Pennsylvania
Well, thank you.
politics, such as the gubernatorial debate.
did.
And you brought up Alex
Trebek.
Yes.
Trebek, and got a lot of attention with that.
We did. It was interesting. Yeah.
Nationwide. Now you're having a dinner coming up.
We are.
Who is your speaker going to
September,
be?
we're very pleased to have recently announced that Nikki Haley, the former ambassador to the United Nations, former governor of South Carolina,
That's
will be the
awesome.
speaker here later this year. And it's gone over extremely well. We're looking forward to that. She'll do some remarks, and then there will be a Q&A with Ambassador Haley.
Has she told you if she's running for president or not?
No, but we may work that question in somewhere into the night. I don't know. I'm sure the answer will be she's weighing options, as anyone would say, but I think it'll be a great evening.
One would think she would perhaps have already announced by September, so you may have a presidential
It
candidate.
may be out of our hands
Yes,
at that point. We may have a
exactly.
presidential candidate here that evening at the Hershey Lodge.
Great. And the date, September?
I want to say, boy, now you're really
I'm
testing
sorry.
me. I'd like the 23rd, somewhere around in there.
But just go to pachamber.org. It's
PAChamber.org,
right on the
it's listed
homepage.
on there, and
So save the
all
date.
the good stuff is there. Absolutely.
Okay, Gene.
Okay.
We want to thank you so much for joining Maura and myself today.
Thank you for
and
having
our
me come on.
Viewing audience, and we want to have you back here very shortly and hear more about the appearance of Nikki Haley, for example, and your work on workforce development.
good luck.
Glad to do it. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with the next segment of Behind the Headlines.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Behind the Headlines is also brought to you by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber serves as the frontline advocate for business on Pennsylvania's Capitol Hill by influencing the legislative, regulatory, and judicial branches of state government. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On this half of Behind the Headlines, Maura and I are fortunate enough to have Brad Bumstead come back with us. And of course, Brad, you are a writer for the caucus. Can we start out a little bit by, will you share with the viewers what the caucus is, how it's progressing, and what the future of the caucus might be?
Sure. It's progressing well. It's been over 2 years now, and it's a watchdog publication on state government, published once a week, now available digitally as well as on paper. And eventually, we're going to see within the next couple months, this has already been announced, a merger of the caucus's reporters with the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Post-Gazette under the banner of something called Spotlight PA. Mm-hmm. Exactly how that will be delivered and what format, I'm not sure yet, but it's going to be enlarged beyond the current folks we have, with a lot of some new database reporting and other technical aspects that'll make this quite a production, and something really important, I think, in terms of state government and following it.
It's really great to see a resurgence of some news organizations rather than what we've been through over the last several years of dwindling access to news.
Exactly.
It's really great. Amen. So you got kudos to you for keeping this going and growing. It's great.
Well, thanks for having me on here. I'm just in from Key West, and that's what you said.
We talked to Brad about
reporting on big things from Key West.
We talked to Brad about his sunglasses that he had earlier, and that's changed. But
yes.
You look tanned, rested, and relaxed.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell you what, a speech that was more relaxed than I'm used to seeing was the governor's budget address this year. Going back to Governor Ridge, we used to have a State of the Commonwealth address and then a budget address 2 weeks later. Governor Ridge thought that was perhaps a bit redundant, and he thought we could consolidate those two speeches and do one, and so all the governors since that time have done that. This speech seemed very laid back, very conciliatory, like the governor was reaching for a tone, trying to set a tone of accommodation and one that would of cooperation with the General Assembly. Is that fair to say, Brad?
That's fair to say, and it's very well put. I think that's exactly what we saw. His first two budgets, you'll remember, were trench warfare reminiscent of World War I with the Republicans in the legislature. I mean, really, with the huge tax increases that he sought, in fairness to Governor Wolf, which he said a large portion of which would be used to reduce property taxes, but there was increased spending, no doubt about it, and it was so bad in 2015 that the budget wasn't resolved, and it went the whole way into his next budget address when there was no budget in place for that year. So, and then some more warfare after that. And I think one thing the Republicans learned after that is, Wolf had vetoed the budget, and there was no budget in existence, but he could continue to spend money. And then they started to figure out and look at it. He was spending upwards way above $30 billion anyway. Some said 32, 33, 34 billion. He could just keep spending without any checks and balances on it. So that was not a good way to go for them either. So everybody realized, wait, we're all losers in this. Let's tone it down. And the budget was almost blasé. As Mara would agree.
Well, Mara
probably
and I have never
quiet.
heard anything referred to as trench warfare before.
Yeah, well, and he did have some very difficult years, and it seems like there's a lot more reactions that are positive about what he's trying to accomplish,
Yes.
especially when it comes to workforce development. There will always be differences, of course, on severance tax and minimum wage, but for the most part, everybody began their reaction statements with, well, you know, we commend the governor for his conciliatory remarks and the fact that he wants to focus on workforce development. Then the but comes, but it seems very quiet this year. Very not. I bet it's on time. I'm going to guess on time. What's your guess?
I think it'll be on time.
On time, yeah.
Or a little
Charlie?
early.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think we've got the same thing here. But one of the other topics we want to talk to you about that Charlie and I are particularly interested in, and that is the Lieutenant Governor's marijuana listening tour. He's apparently going to go to all 67 counties and listen to what people have to say about not just medical marijuana, but recreational marijuana. And so it's going to be very interesting. Do you know tell us what you know about this and what his time frame is, and is he going to write a report? What's he going to do? What's
Yeah.
going to happen?
How many of these are you going to?
I don't know that we're going to go. That I'm going to go to any. We interviewed him about it extensively earlier this week, and he says that it's all going to be transparent, and each meeting is going to be a video that's posted on his website. So I won't have to go anywhere to watch it. You'll be
okay.
able to watch some of it there. And look, lieutenant governors don't have much to do in the first place. Let's start with that. I mean, it's true. Come on, you know it's true.
It
But
is true.
He has to preside over the Senate.
he
Brad.
does, right, and the pardons board. But beyond that, they don't have a lot to do. However, other lieutenant governors have done a lot based on the assignments given to them by the governor. Now, Lieutenant Governor Stack and Wolf didn't get along, so there was not much for Stack to do other than his assigned duties, which he managed to get a lot out of. But Jim Cawley, when he was lieutenant governor, had extensive assignments on Marcellus Shale. Mark Single had done some, and Lieutenant Governor Schweiker also had a lot on cutting spending and reports to do. So, you know, this is something that he can do, and it's something that he knows something about. I said, of course you've smoked marijuana, isn't that correct, Lieutenant Governor? He said, oh yes, he says, at Burning Man in the 1990s.
Burning Man.
Did he inhale, Brad?
Yeah.
Did you do the follow-up question?
It wasn't necessary.
So this is actually, this is probably more a case of brought this forth to the governor and said, I'd like to do this because he supports recreational marijuana and the legalization of recreational marijuana. So it seems to me this is a little bit different. He wants to, I think, probably be able to make his case to the governor that he should support it because the governor does not at this point. Is that correct?
Close. I mean, I think it could have gone down that way, but I think Governor Wolf is open to the idea very much so. I mean, I don't think that he's said, "Oh, we can't do this," or he wouldn't allow, you know, Fetterman to
listening
do what he's
tour,
doing.
yeah,
right.
right.
I mean, but I think he's as the governor has to take a step back a little further, whereas Fetterman can, you know, get his hands in all of this and on it and talk to people. And in that sense, it's good. You'll get feedback. But look, here's another point of view. That is, I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost for him to tour 67 counties, thousands of dollars, clearly. You could do a poll, extensive poll in Pennsylvania, and get county feedback from each region, what they think about legalizing recreational marijuana without going on a tour. So it's somewhat self-promotional for him.
Did you ask him this question? Would have been a good question to ask him. Isn't this costing a lot of money?
I don't think we asked that. It was hard to get our arms around in 20 minutes. But, you know, it is something that would cost money. How much, I don't know. I mean, look, in the big scheme of things, it's not that expensive. But my point is more that it is self-promotional for him. But that's good politics. That's what all these people do on topics that they want to get out front on. So, you know, more power to them.
Would every stop on the listening tour are for example, if some are being held in volunteer fire companies and other types of civic organizations, are they selling brownies at the end of the meeting?
No, they'd be crazy not to.
Well, they might, but if some of those firemen are eating them, I hope they don't get a call back.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, there are few people in the Commonwealth who would be as well positioned as yourself to answer this question. Maura and I have wondered about this, and that is, how did we get to this point when we were talking about medical marijuana not very long ago, and we legalized medical marijuana? There were a large number of state policymakers who said, have no fear, we're not going anywhere near recreational marijuana use. And they gave us their assurances. What's happened? This has not been all that, not much time has passed.
Well, it's like when we said Governor Rendell wanted slots at tracks. And people said, well, I could go along with that, but that quickly turns into, well, and we're going to have casinos too, and that, but there's just going to be slots at the casinos.
It's a slippery
Slot
slope.
machines, and if we do the slots, well, we have to have table games, you know, and now we have sports betting and everything. You name it, and we've got it. You can bet on anything in Pennsylvania, just about fantasy baseball, the works. So I think the same thing happened here. Once they crossed the line with medical marijuana, which is absurd because medical marijuana doesn't get you high. It's not a, you know, but it is marijuana. You know. So once we crossed the Rubicon, if you will, now it's okay to look at these things, and public opinion has shifted clearly over the past 5-10 years. And you know, Eugene DePasquale, the Auditor General, was the first to realize, I think, and seize upon that shift in public opinion and get out front on it before anybody else. A Republican legislature willing to do that right now? Nah. But the first big budget crisis we face, and I'm talking big like Corbett's first year of $6 billion, would you rather raise taxes or legalize marijuana?
And tax it.
I think the answer is easy.
So you think it comes down to whenever we get into a budget crisis, we're going to see it?
Yes.
You didn't include cut spending in any of those options, Brad.
That's because they never really want to. I mean, they talk good about it, but when it comes time to cutting something, it could be their own program. So it's a hard thing to do.
So what is the Lieutenant Governor's objective with these listening tours?
To get his name out there, to keep busy, and to deal with a topic that he knows a lot about and cares about from a policy standpoint. I mean, none of these things are one issue or that simple that it's solely for, you know, John Fetterman's well-being, but that's part of it, and so is the policy, and so is gathering opinion. And he did say one thing when I was talking to him. I was like, well, what's the point in doing this? If you're for this, aren't you going to be out there? Isn't it somewhat, how can you be objective? And he said that, no, I'm not, this is not about me putting my opinion on it. It's to collect information from people.
Brad, we have to have you come back again. Well, we always run out
See
of
what
time.
happens.
We're just warming up. We look forward to your next visit, and we look forward to your next visit as well. Please tune in next week and join us again on Behind the Headlines. We'll see you then.